June 6, 1944, 6:30 a.m. The Atlantic is gray, a jagged line between sea and sky. Cold spray lashes the faces of men huddled in the open ramps of landing craft, waves tossing their small vessels like toys in a storm. Salt water stings eyes, wet clothes cling to skin, and the scent of oil, diesel, and fear hangs heavy in the air. Ahead lies the beach, a seemingly peaceful cove of golden sand, deceptive in its calm. Beyond it, the bluffs rise 100 feet, jagged silhouettes against the morning light. On top, German machine guns peer through steel loopholes, their muzzles already glinting with deadly intent. Mortar fire whistles through the air, a cold chorus of impending death. Inside the craft, 32 men of the 16th Infantry Regiment grip rifles, flamethrowers, ladders, and nerves that feel frayed to snapping. Lieutenant John Spowing, 29, stares through the mist, heart pounding, stomach churning, aware that every second counts. Beside him, Technical Sergeant Philip SDRC scans the horizon, calculating survival in the chaos. The ram drops. Water crashes over boots and knees. Bullets ricochet, sending spouts of sand and seawater skyward. Men scramble, falter, fight for footing in chest-deep pools, and begin the ascent across terrain designed for slaughter. The war's young chaos converges here. On this strip of sand, courage will be measured in yards gained, lives risked, and the sheer will to survive. For these first waves, the Atlantic Wall is more than concrete and steel. It is death incarnate. And yet, among the chaos, a path must be carved. One small group of men will decide whether Omaha Beach can be taken or lost. By early 1944, the Allies had made the difficult decision to open a second front in Western Europe. Months of planning and reconnaissance had narrowed the options for the invasion of Nazi-occupied France to the Normandy region, a stretch of coast that offered beaches, ports, and, most critically, approachable terrain for landing troops, vehicles, and armor. The operation, codenamed Overlord, would require the coordination of thousands of ships, aircraft, and soldiers, all converging under the constant threat of the German Atlantic Wall, a formidable series of fortifications stretching along the Western European coastline. Omaha Beach, assigned to American forces, was unlike its neighboring landing sites. Sword and Gold to the east, Juneau to the west, Utah further along the coastline. They were all carefully surveyed and defended, but Omaha's geography presented unique challenges. A crescent of golden sand, 3.7 miles long, it was framed by a continuous line of bluffs, rising almost 100 feet above the shore. From these heights, defenders could observe every approach, direct artillery, and fire into any landing party below. Unlike the flatter beaches, the bluffs created natural kill zones, turning the stretch of sand into a lethal funnel where attackers would have to fight uphill against entrenched enemy positions. Intelligence had identified 5 natural inlets, draws, cutting through the bluffs. These valleys were the only practical routes for troops, artillery, and vehicles to move inland. They became the focus of both Allied planning and German defense. The Germans, under Field Marshal Rommel's supervision, had fortified the draws with resistance nests, known as Widerstandsnester, linking bunkers, casemates, machine gun positions, anti-tank emplacements, and mortar nests along the crest. Each position was sited for mutual support, covering the draw below and adjacent sectors. In the Easy Red sector, these strongpoints included 15 bunkers, manned by roughly 1,000 soldiers, armed with 80 machine guns, 18 anti-tank guns, and 9 mortars. The task facing the first waves was nothing short of monumental. For the Americans, it was not simply a matter of gaining the beach. It was about establishing a foothold in what the Germans had designed as a death trap. Units were broken down into sectors. Easy Red and Easy Green in the eastern half, assigned to the 1st Infantry Division, the famed Big Red One, and Charlie, Dog, Green, White, and Red sectors further west under the 29th Infantry Division. Planners focused on the draws as lifelines, the only points where follow-on waves could advance off the beach, bring in armor, and link with units further along the coastline. The men landing that morning had trained for months. They studied maps, practiced obstacle clearing, and rehearsed the scaling of cliffs under simulated fire. Yet no exercise could replicate the horror of the actual day. Obstacles were planted along the sand. Metal stakes, hedgehogs, and mines designed to pierce boats, shrapnel from artillery, and enfilading fire from hidden machine guns all awaited them. The Higgins boats, or LCVPs, carrying these soldiers would have to navigate shallow sandbars, deep pools, and the surf under direct observation from the enemy. At 6:30 a.m., the first waves approached the shore. Men faced more than the natural difficulties of tide and terrain. They confronted the deadly intent of defenders who had spent months preparing for their arrival. The Atlantic Wall was designed for one purpose: to stop a landing before it ever reached the inland routes. Omaha Beach combined natural and engineered defenses in a way unmatched anywhere along the invasion front. The stakes could not have been higher, nor the odds more daunting. Among the men preparing to land, a select group of 32 would bear the unique burden of breaching the easy red draw. Led by 2nd Lieutenant John Spowing and Technical Sergeant Philip SDRC, these soldiers were assigned to the 16th Infantry Regiment. Their task: cross the sand, navigate the barbed wire and obstacles, evade machine gun fire, and scale the bluffs to open the draw for the waves behind them. Success would hinge not on firepower alone, but on courage, ingenuity, and sheer determination. Failure would mean death or capture under the relentless gaze of the German defenses. The stage was set. Omaha Beach was more than sand and cliffs. It was a crucible. That morning, men would confront the full weight of preparation, terrain, and enemy ingenuity, testing every ounce of training and resolve. The first wave would decide whether the beach would be a gateway or a grave. The months leading to D-Day had transformed Normandy from a quiet, rural coastline into a heavily surveilled and fortified theater of war. German intelligence knew an invasion was coming, though the precise location remained uncertain. They had reinforced the Atlantic Wall with concrete bunkers, trenches, minefields, and barbed wire, making it one of the most formidable defensive systems in military history. Every bluff, inlet, and ridge was mapped, every approach anticipated. For soldiers of the 1st Infantry Division, it would be a race against time, terrain, and machine. The Easy Red Sector, the easternmost part of Omaha, combined natural and man-made defenses in a way that made it exceptionally deadly. Beyond the bluffs, the Germans dug trenches that crisscrossed the ridges, allowing defenders to move unseen and emerge where least expected. Machine gun positions covered overlapping fields of fire, while mortars and artillery reinforced the kill zones below. Every draw, enemy perspective from a German side, Omaha Beach was prepared with meticulous foresight. Every pillbox, machine gun nest, and anti-tank gun was strategically positioned to exploit terrain and channel attackers into kill zones. Soldiers of the 352nd Infantry Division understood their mission: inflict maximum casualties and delay the Allies. Yet even for these defenders, the day was chaos. Observation posts tracked movement across sandbars, but smoke, shifting tides, and the sheer number of landing craft complicated targeting. German soldiers faced their own psychological strain, exposed to naval bombardment, uncertain of enemy numbers, and aware that each inch of territory gained by the Allies could turn the tide. For the men of W-64, for instance, the sudden appearance of 32 determined attackers emerging from the water forced rapid recalibration of focus. Their weapons were effective, but the concentrated assault and unpredictable angles of attack tested the defensive network. Omaha Beach was designed to annihilate, yet even the defenders faced unpredictability under the pressure of combat. Moral perspective warfare at this scale presented moral dilemmas as much as physical danger. Soldiers like Spowing and SDRC faced ethical decisions while bullets and shrapnel rained around them. Encountering surrendering enemy soldiers, they were forced to choose between immediate lethal action and taking prisoners for intelligence, a choice that could save future lives but temporarily increased risk. Similarly, Commanding officers had to weigh the lives of their men against mission objectives. Each inch gained was measured not just in terrain, but in human cost. The act of breaching a machine gun position or navigating a minefield was not only a tactical achievement, but a moral burden, a responsibility for the lives of those who followed. Courage on Omaha Beach was inseparable from conscience, with split-second choices carrying consequences far beyond the immediate firefight. Environmental/terrain perspective, Omaha Beach itself was an unforgiving adversary. Unlike the flat expanses of Utah or Gold Beaches, Easy Red was hemmed by cliffs rising nearly 100 feet, creating natural defensive advantages for the Germans. The sand was deceptive, soft in some areas, hard-packed in others, with pools forming over submerged sandbars. Mines and anti-tank obstacles punctuated the landscape, invisible until the moment of foot or boot struck them. Tides determined accessibility. A low tide could leave landing craft stranded on sandbars, forcing soldiers into deeper water, while high tide threatened rapid inundation under fire. The weather added another variable. Wind, cold, and spray from the channel chilled men to the bone, sapping strength and morale. Natural gullies and depressions offered some cover, but they were narrow and perilous paths, funneling soldiers into predictable lines of fire. The environment demanded constant attention. Every step weighed against potential injury or death. Psychological perspective, combat on Omaha Beach was a mental as well as physical trial. For soldiers like those in the first wave, fear was immediate, visceral, and omnipresent. The human mind struggled to process the simultaneity of bullets, explosions, drowning threats, and fallen comrades. Stress responses varied. Some froze, others moved with instinctive precision, while veterans like SDRC adapted to the chaos. Sleep deprivation, prior combat experience, and pre-landing nerves interacted to influence decision-making. The soundscape, a mixture of gunfire, artillery, shouts, and crashing waves, overloaded senses. For those ascending the bluffs, the psychological strain multiplied as they confronted steep inclines under enemy fire, witnessing fellow soldiers fall. Mental resilience was as critical as physical capability. The ability to continue despite fear defined who survived and who did not. Integration of perspectives, these angles, enemy, moral, environmental, and psychological, intersected with human, tactical, leadership, and technological considerations to form a holistic understanding of Omaha Beach on D-Day. Success was never guaranteed, and victory was measured not only by territory gained, but by coordination across these layers of complexity. The first wave of 32 men exemplified this integration. Human courage guided by leadership, informed by tactical planning, executed with available technology, while navigating the terrain and confronting moral and psychological trials. Every factor influenced outcomes, illustrating that warfare is never a singular dimension, but a convergence of multiple, interdependent realities. The complexity of these angles leads directly to the decisive moments on the beach, the turning points where strategy, courage, and circumstance collided, determining the success or failure of the assault. June 6, 1944, 6:30 a.m. The Higgins boats pitched and rolled as they approached the sands of Easy Red on Omaha Beach. The channel's gray waves crashed against steel hulls, spattered with spray that chilled men to the bone. 32 soldiers of E Company, 16th Infantry Regiment, gripped rifles and equipment, hearts hammering against the looming certainty of death. Among them, 2nd Lieutenant John Spoing scanned the horizon. The blurred outlines of German pillboxes perched atop cliffs 100 feet above, machine guns ready to carve flesh and steel. The ramp dropped. Water surged, boots sank into the wet sand. Gunfire erupted from the bluffs, punctuated by the thunder of artillery. Men went down immediately, some swallowed by the shallows, others struck by bullets before reaching the beach. The first wave had no cover, only instinct, training, and determination. Spoing and Technical Sergeant Philip SDRC pushed forward, coordinating the group as machine gun tracers hissed overhead. Obstacles littered the beach, mines buried in soft sand, anti-tank hedgehogs, steel rails twisted into grotesque barricades. Spowing's section moved as best it could, a scattered V formation, relying on the natural contours of sandbanks and shallow gullies. Each step forward was a negotiation with gravity, tide, and lead. Private Vin DeGuido struggled to keep the flamethrower upright, its weight compounded by waterlogged clothing. He would carry it to the foot of the bluffs, the very instrument that might save or doom him depending on how the fight unfolded. By 6:45 a.m., the section reached the Roman ruins, a barely discernible pile of concrete blocks serving as a reference point amidst chaos. Here, natural cover allowed the first semblance of organized return fire. They targeted lone riflemen and machine gun positions to the left, staving off immediate annihilation. Yet the climb remained. The bluffs loomed, a vertical wall of sand, rock, and prepared German positions. Every man knew that to ascend meant exposure, but staying on the beach meant certain death. Technical Sergeant SDRC took the lead. Years of experience in Tunisia and Sicily had honed his instincts. He guided the men along small depressions, avoiding visible tripwires and mines where possible. Each step was deliberate, calculated, a silent dialogue between fear and training. Behind him, Spowing coordinated covering fire and monitored the scattered group, issuing calm, precise orders amidst the uproar. A single misstep could trigger a mine. A single glance in the wrong direction could bring a burst of bullets. At 7:15 a.m., they encountered a lone German machine gun near the crest of the bluffs. It dominated the path ahead. Its operator, alert and skilled, raked the sand with deadly precision. The men of E Company froze momentarily, evaluating options. SDRC moved forward, throwing grenades to suppress fire, while Sergeant Biscoe provided covering shots. Bullets tore sand around them, some hitting the soldiers, but none fatally. The machine gunner's position was a choke point. Failure to neutralize it would stall the entire assault. Spowing ordered charge. They advanced in measured bounds, using dips and small gullies for cover. At 15 yards, they could see the Germans' hands rise, a surrender. The men held fire, securing prisoners rather than risking exposure. This small act of tactical patience preserved momentum, demonstrating that even in the chaos of the beach, disciplined leadership could save lives while maintaining mission focus. Simultaneously, other sections of E Company were engaged elsewhere along the draw, facing positions such as W62 and W64. The coordinated assault relied on timing, communication, and mutual trust. Each firefight, each suppression of a machine gun nest, was a domino, enabling follow-on waves to push inland. In this first critical hour, the beach that had promised only carnage began to yield to organized determination. By 7:30 a.m., the first small group of soldiers reached the foot of the cliffs. The air was thick with smoke from smoldering landing craft and artillery bursts. Blood, sand, and seawater coated every uniform. Men pressed forward, gripping ladders, ropes, and rifles, preparing to scale the bluffs. They were the vanguard, the eyes of the assault, tasked with piercing the Atlantic wall. The climb was grueling, exposed, and deadly, but it marked the beginning of the turning point. For the first time, Allied forces were on the bluffs, a foothold established against the carefully calculated defenses of the German army. The battle on the beach was far from over, but the initial breakthrough by these 32 men crystallized the fragile balance of the morning. It demonstrated that courage, coordination, and adaptability could overcome even the most daunting of fortifications. Every second of this advance carried the weight of life and death, and every movement shaped the unfolding of the invasion that would determine the liberation of Western Europe. The stage was set. The men were on the bluffs, but beyond lay the fortified network of trenches, casemates, and pillboxes that would define the next hours of the fight. The decisive confrontations that followed would test every ounce of their training, endurance, and resolve. By 7:45 a.m., Spowing's section had reached the base of the bluffs. The cliffs were scarred with German trenches, sandbagged emplacements, and pillboxes firing down into every depression. The roar of artillery and machine guns filled the air, punctuated by the screams of men and the crack of small arms fire. The first wave had already thinned, leaving gaps in the defensive lines. The men of E Company were now facing the most dangerous part of the operation, scaling the bluffs under fire. Sergeant SDRC led the way, moving cautiously along a narrow depression, signaling the men behind him. Each step was fraught with peril. Hidden mines dotted the sand, ready to turn a misstep into death. German soldiers above carefully aimed down, their weapons cutting through the smoke-filled morning. SDRC coordinated with Spoing, who directed covering fire from the rear. Grenades were lobbed into machine gun nests. A bazooka was fired at a particularly well-fortified pillbox, but missed, leaving the position active. Private Tilly and PFC Digiano, exhausted and soaked, struggled to keep up, carrying heavy packs and weapons. The sand burned their hands, the weight of waterlogged gear slowing every move. Each man knew that a single bullet could end them instantly. They pressed on, using dips, gullies, and the partial cover of debris to shield themselves. The climb was methodical, deliberate, and terrifying. Around 8:15 a.m., they encountered a lone German machine gun near the crest. Its operator was alert and deadly accurate, mowing down the sand ahead. Sergeant Biscoe and Sergeant Carlson coordinated suppressive fire. SDRC crawled forward, throwing grenades to silence the gun. The operator surrendered, hands raised. The men quickly secured the prisoner and pressed forward, maintaining the momentum necessary to secure the crest. Every second counted. Hesitation meant death. As the first group reached the top, they found a network of trenches running along the crest, interspersed with pillboxes firing down on the remaining soldiers below. Sergeant Carlson took the lead, moving along the trench to engage a pillbox. The door offered a small opening, and he set up his bipod, firing into the chamber. A white flag emerged. German soldiers surrendered, adding prisoners to those already captured. Each neutralized position made the beach slightly safer. Each trench cleared opened a route for follow-on forces. Meanwhile, other sections of E Company were moving inland along the E1 draw. Captain Joe Dawson's group, landing 20 minutes behind, turned left toward Kvil-Sioux, while Spoing's group turned right, targeting W64. Communication between groups was minimal. Progress depended on individual initiative, experience, and courage. Men climbed, crawled, and fired their way through German defensive positions. Grenades and rifle fire cleared nests, and careful observation allowed soldiers to anticipate enemy positions. By 9 a.m., the bluffs were partially secured. The first foothold on the top of the cliffs had been established. Casualties were high. 2 men, Sergeants Raimundo and Biscoe, had fallen, while others were wounded, but the critical objective had been achieved. The men had carved a path through one of the most formidable sections of Omaha Beach. From this vantage point, they could observe German positions across the sand, identify remaining threats, and direct artillery and supporting fire inland. The significance of their actions cannot be overstated. In just a few hours, the 32 men of Spoing's first wave had breached the Atlantic Wall in their sector, neutralized key positions, and provided the opening necessary for follow-on waves to advance. Their courage under fire, disciplined coordination, and tactical ingenuity turned the tide on a beach designed to repel any assault. By mid-morning, E Company's actions had facilitated further inland movement. American forces exploited the gap, advancing through the E1 draw and linking with other units to push back German defenses. The initial chaos of Omaha Beach began to resolve into organized movement, slowly but inexorably breaking the Atlantic Wall's grip. Every yard gained was a testament to the bravery and perseverance of men facing the full force of a prepared defensive network. The morning of June 6, 1944, was far from over. The carnage continued, with artillery, machine guns, and mortars inflicting heavy losses. Yet the breakthrough achieved by Spoing, SDRC, and their comrades provided hope. proving that even in the most lethal conditions, disciplined, courageous soldiers could overcome the deadliest obstacles. By 10 a.m., a fragile but crucial foothold had been established on Omaha Beach, an achievement that would resonate throughout the rest of the campaign in Normandy. The turning point had come. The Atlantic Wall, for all its preparation and firepower, had been breached. The battle for the bluffs marked a decisive moment. A small group of determined soldiers had opened the way for thousands more, setting the stage for the eventual liberation of occupied France. By the afternoon of June 6, 1944, the initial chaos of Omaha Beach had begun to settle into grim reality. The sand, once golden and unbroken, was now pockmarked with shell craters, debris from destroyed landing craft, and the detritus of battle. Smoke and dust hung heavy over the beach, drifting inland with the morning breeze. The screams and cries of wounded men mingled with the distant rumble of naval artillery, a haunting soundtrack to a day that would be etched forever in history. Casualties were staggering. Across the eastern half of Omaha Beach, over 3,000 men were killed, wounded, or missing within the first hours. The 16th Infantry Regiment, tasked with securing the Easy Red Sector, suffered heavily. For Spowing's section, out of the 32 men who had landed in that first wave, 2 were dead, 8 wounded, and the remaining men exhausted, bloodied, and shell-shocked. Yet their sacrifice was not in vain. The route through the E1 draw was secured, and follow-on waves of soldiers could move inland, exploiting the breach. The German defenders, though formidable and well-prepared, had paid a price as well. Many strong points were neutralized, and a number of defensive nests had surrendered or been destroyed. Their strategy, predicated on killing attackers before they could ascend the bluffs, had been partially successful, but the bravery and persistence of small groups of American soldiers had begun to unravel it. German commanders on the cliffs struggled to maintain cohesion under the relentless assault and the disorienting fog of battle. Coordination between positions faltered as communication lines were cut and leaders fell. Strategically, the breakthrough at the bluffs was essential. By seizing the high ground, American forces could observe inland movements, direct artillery fire, and facilitate the landing of armored vehicles and supplies. The capture of key exits from the beach allowed Sherman tanks and jeeps to move off the sand and into the bocage, creating momentum for further operations. Without this foothold, the Allied invasion risked grinding to a deadly halt under German fire, potentially altering the timeline of Operation Overlord. Beyond the immediate tactical impact, the psychological effect of the Omaha Beach landings was profound. For American soldiers, surviving the landing, advancing under fire, and reaching the bluffs instilled both a sense of relief and grim determination. The cost was visible in every expression: exhaustion, pain, grief, and a haunting realization of how fragile survival had been. For German troops, witnessing the determination of their adversaries challenged assumptions about the invincibility of their Atlantic Wall. The perception that Allied troops could be repelled with machine guns and mortars alone had been shattered. Medics worked tirelessly to stabilize the wounded, triaging the injured under perilous conditions. Corpsmen waded through waist-deep water and across sandbars, carrying stretcher loads back to temporary aid stations. Makeshift triage points were established behind dunes, often under sporadic enemy fire. Soldiers like Private George Bowen, the medic for Spowing's section, became critical lifelines, saving men who would otherwise have perished. Each act of courage, whether in combat or care, highlighted the human dimension of the battle. Logistically, the beach remained a challenge. Obstacles, sunken landing craft, barbed wire, mines, and shell-cratered sand complicated the movement of troops and material. Naval engineers and combat engineers worked under fire to clear paths, build ramps, and remove obstacles, enabling follow-on forces to reach inland objectives. Supplies, reinforcements, and heavier weapons could now flow more reliably, thanks to the initial breakthroughs achieved by small groups of soldiers in the first wave. The scale of destruction was visible everywhere. Landing craft were destroyed or stranded. Sandbags and anti-tank obstacles were twisted and broken. The once pristine cliffs bore the scars of shell fire and small arms battles. Each footprint in the sand, each shell crater, told a story of individual courage and sacrifice, of men facing almost certain death, yet pushing forward for the larger mission. As night approached, the surviving soldiers consolidated positions. The bluffs, now partially secured, became defensive lines against potential counterattacks. Communication with rear units allowed coordination of artillery and reinforcements, stabilizing the situation and preparing for the continued push inland. By day's end, despite horrendous losses, the first crucial objectives of Easy Red were achieved, setting the stage for subsequent advances across Normandy. The bravery and losses of these soldiers reflected a simple, devastating truth. Victory came at a cost measured in lives, courage, and perseverance. Omaha Beach had been breached, but the price paid underscored the brutal reality of amphibious warfare and the intensity of the German defensive preparations. In the days following D-Day, the consequences of the Omaha Beach landings became increasingly evident. The initial breach of the Atlantic Wall had set in motion a chain of events that would ripple across Normandy. Allied forces, now firmly ashore, could begin linking beachheads, securing supply lines, and preparing for the push toward Cannes and the interior. The foothold at Easy Red and neighboring sectors became a lifeline, ensuring that men, vehicles, and ammunition could flow from the landing beaches into contested territory. For the German forces, the failure to hold the bluffs and key exits was catastrophic. The Atlantic Wall, which had been considered nearly impenetrable along this sector, had been compromised. Commanders faced a grim choice: reinforce positions under constant bombardment or withdraw to secondary defensive lines inland. The loss of visibility over the approaches from the bluffs rendered many pillboxes and machine gun nests obsolete. Enemy artillery and infantry movements could no longer be tracked effectively, and communication between isolated strongpoints faltered. In essence, Omaha Beach was no longer a defensive asset, but a vulnerable liability. The human cost remained stark. Across the beach and beyond, thousands of men were counted as dead, wounded, or missing. Casualty reports from the 16th Infantry Regiment alone detailed dozens of soldiers killed and many more injured. Medical units struggled to cope, improvising under fire with limited supplies and often under direct threat. Corpsmen, medics, and stretcher bearers labored tirelessly, moving men to temporary aid stations, makeshift field hospitals, and evacuation points for transport to ships or rear positions. These efforts highlighted the dual struggle of combat and care, where survival depended not only on courage under fire, but on the efficiency of medical response. Omaha Beach also revealed the limits of technology and preparation. Despite extensive intelligence, aerial reconnaissance, and naval bombardment, Allied planners had underestimated both the terrain and the effectiveness of German defensive positions. The sheer scale of obstacles, barbed wire, mines, anti-tank emplacements, and fortified bluffs exacted a higher toll than anticipated. Yet, the improvisation and determination of small units turned potential disaster into a hard-won success. Tactical innovation, like the use of Bangalore torpedoes to clear wire or coordinated fire teams to neutralize pillboxes, became essential lessons for subsequent operations. Strategically, the successful breach of Omaha Beach marked a turning point in the Normandy invasion. It allowed armored units, including Sherman tanks, to advance off the beach and support infantry as they moved into the bocage. Artillery and logistical units could now establish positions inland, providing sustained fire support and supply for follow-on forces. Without this beachhead, the larger objectives of Operation Overlord, linking up the 5 invasion beaches, securing Cherbourg, and eventually liberating France, would have been imperiled. The courage of relatively small units in the first wave, thus, had operational ramifications far beyond their immediate sector. The psychological impact was profound on both sides. For the Allied troops, surviving Omaha instilled a mix of relief, horror, and determination. The sheer intensity of enemy fire, the chaos of landing craft struggling through sandbars, and the constant threat of death created bonds of camaraderie and resilience that would define units throughout the campaign. For German soldiers, the breach shattered confidence in the Atlantic Wall. The myth of invulnerability was gone, and the realization that determined, coordinated infantry could overcome even the most formidable defenses began to sink in. In the weeks that followed, remnants of Omaha Beach were cleared, bodies recovered, and supply lines stabilized. The scars of battle, the craters, destroyed obstacles, and flattened dunes, remained visible, a permanent testament to the intensity of combat. Yet, the beach that had exacted such a heavy toll also became a symbol of perseverance and tactical success. The first wave's achievements, particularly in sectors like Easy Red, had enabled the momentum necessary to sustain the Normandy campaign. By the end of June 1944, Omaha Beach had evolved from a lethal killing zone into a vital corridor for Allied operations. The sacrifices of those initial waves of soldiers, including men like Lieutenant Spoing, Technical Sergeant SDRC, and their comrades, had not only secured a foothold, but reshaped the operational landscape of northern France. Their bravery underscored the principle that in warfare, even small groups, acting with courage and discipline, could influence the course of a major campaign. The lessons of Omaha Beach would resonate far beyond June 6, 1944. The importance of preparation, adaptability, coordination, and above all, the indomitable human spirit in the face of overwhelming odds. From the devastated sand and bluffs of Easy Red, the tide of liberation had begun to turn, carried forward by men who had endured what seemed impossible and emerged victorious, though scarred, from one of history's most ferocious battles. Omaha Beach stands today not merely as a stretch of sand, but as a monument to human courage, ingenuity, and sacrifice. The events of June 6, 1944, reveal more than the mechanics of war. They expose the raw, unfiltered reality of men confronting fear, chaos, and death in pursuit of a cause far greater than themselves. The names of those who survived and those who did not echo across history, reminding us that victory is often built on acts of individual bravery repeated countless times. The landing at Easy Red, where a single wave of soldiers overcame bluffs, barbed wire, and relentless gunfire, exemplifies the tension between preparation and improvisation. Plans, maps, and intelligence guided them. Yet it was decisiveness, quick thinking, and sheer resolve that carried men from landing craft into relative safety. In the midst of carnage, moments of leadership, courage, and ingenuity emerged. The Bangalore torpedoes clearing wire, small teams neutralizing pillboxes, medics braving open fire to save lives. These actions demonstrate that warfare is as much human as it is mechanical, and that courage can alter the course of history. Yet Omaha also teaches the cost of conflict. Every strategic success was paid for in lives, limbs, and lasting trauma. Soldiers returned home bearing memories of horror, physical injuries, and invisible scars. The toll on families, communities, and nations cannot be measured by maps or battle reports alone. It is in this space between valor and loss, between mission accomplished and human cost, that the full weight of war is understood. Finally, the legacy of Omaha Beach endures in both remembrance and design. Military strategists study it for lessons in amphibious operations, terrain, and coordination. Historians study it for insight into leadership, morale, and human resilience. The men who braved that first wave remind us that survival often depended not on superior firepower or equipment, but on observation, quick decision-making, and the ability to adapt under pressure. Omaha Beach is more than sand and cliffs. It is a testament to the principle that even in the darkest hours, courage, ingenuity, and sacrifice can carve a path forward. The echoes of those who stood, fell, and survived that day continue to shape our understanding of warfare, leadership, and the human spirit. And in remembering them, we honor not just a battle, but the enduring power of ordinary men performing extraordinary deeds under fire.